I used to know somebody who went to my school, and this was about 2016. It was around March break, and everybody was off from school for, for spring break. Now, a friend who I used to know, we will call her by the name of Janice. Now, Janice was about maybe 15 or 16, but she was someone I used to know from school, and she went to Walt Disney World in Florida with her family. Now, they were in a few rooms, but of course one of the rooms she got happened to have like somewhat of Aladdin mixed with Cinderella themed. It seemed pretty interesting, and Janice really liked the room. Most of the time when she was with her by herself, she didn't have much of an issue with a few friends. So the bathroom was honestly gorgeous. It pretty much looked like a little bit of Little Mermaid mixed with Beauty and the Beast, but at the same time, she really enjoyed the hotel room. It was until, late at night when this happened. Now, she was sleeping alone in one bed while her brother was sleeping on the other bed. They both shared a room, but of course, they ordered a few rooms, so we can definitely understand what they were meaning. However, Janice woke up and she couldn't remember what time it was, but it looked like it might have been around maybe 2 or 3 in the morning. She looked at the hotel room and noticed that there was a person. It was seemed to be a black figure, maybe about a, maybe 6 feet tall. And this figure definitely didn't seem anyone. At first, Janice thought that maybe it could have been her brother, but her brother would have said something, but that didn't look like her brother. Of course, Janice was honestly frozen, unsure of what to do. She honestly didn't know if she could even move at this point. She tried to move, but all she could do was stare at this thing. Whatever it was then stared at her and slowly began to make over to her bed. Eventually, she had the courage to close her eyes and scream, waking up her brother. Her brother asked her what was wrong, and she said that she saw a person standing in front of her in her bed, and of course there was nobody there. Of course, her brother did a sweep just to make sure that nobody was hiding, and they couldn't see anybody in there. This definitely had frightened in this had definitely really had her on edge, and of course this was definitely something that Janice never expected to go through. But of course, they had security of the hotel to look through, but they couldn't find anybody in there. So at this moment, they had no idea if that was a real person or not, although the security couldn't find anybody, so they assumed that maybe it could have been Janice's imagination. So, still to this day, Janice looks back at this and wonders if this was just paranormal or what she experienced was sleep paralysis. So, about maybe a few years ago, probably 2018, a friend of mine was taking a vacation to Hawaii, and she was staying there for at least a week or two since her sister, who lived there, was getting married. Now, my friend at the time who used to go to high school, and she took this little bit of a vacation, we will call her by the name Samantha. So Samantha was with her boyfriend, and they both rented a hotel in a pretty decent area. It was near the beaches, to which it was easy walking distance, so it wasn't too far. So everything seemed to be going okay, and things seemed to be going well. However, though, something really strange began to happen, but of course that was on maybe the third night at the hotel that we're staying at. It was at least 2 days before the wedding when Samantha and her boyfriend fell asleep, and Samantha woke up to hearing someone opening and closing the door. She thought that maybe her boyfriend had stepped out to do a cigarette at break, but her boyfriend was sleeping. She even surprised to see the hotel room was open, but just as she was about to close it, she heard something walking into her bathroom. Honestly, she had no idea what it was and had a feeling that maybe It could have been someone that got in the wrong room, but probably didn't realize that this was not their room. As Samantha looked, she could see at the bottom that there was the lights turned on. So when she walked over, she opened the door, but surprisingly, she didn't find anyone in there. Really creepy. She honestly had no idea who it was, so she closed the door, made sure she locked it, and she even closed the bathroom door without finding anyone in there. Thinking that maybe her mind was all a blur, she head back to bed. Not only an hour later or something, she woke up to finding the room visibly cold. The room honestly started to feel very cold, and she honestly started to freeze. She thought that maybe that the air conditioner was a bit high, but the room temperature was fine. Even she looked just to make sure. This was getting really strange as no one was playing with the heat thing on the bedroom. But just as Samantha was about to go to bed, she ended up hearing what seemed to be a laugh of a woman. This honestly frightened her as she looked around, frantically calling out if anyone was there. Eventually, her boyfriend woke up grumpy and asked her what was all the yelling. Eventually, Samantha said that she thought she heard someone outside, or possibly in her room. That is when her boyfriend did a sweep of the room but came back with nothing. He pretty much just told her that she might have been not sleeping good or something. Eventually, they had no issues since that night, but they had no idea what was in that hotel room or who was there. They didn't find anyone in there. So, at this point, Samantha thought that maybe what she experienced that day was completely paranormal. She didn't even bother to bring this up to anybody else, thinking that they would not believe her. Nothing like that has happened for the remainder of their vacation, and that honestly really surprised her to this day. A friend of mine was visiting in Italy, and this was, I think, back in the early 2010s. She was about 13 or 14 years old when her family were going to Italy for a vacation for about 2 weeks. For vacation in Italy was pretty much they were staying at a resort, and it was a pretty nice one. They were near a beach, to which it wasn't far to walk from, but their hotel they were at had a pool that was outside. It was pretty a nice sunny day, so my friend at the time, which we'll call her Charlie, was made a few new friends in Italy. One girl who was about maybe 17 was called Sarah, and she knew English and Italian. Sarah, along with if Charlotte, with Charlie, were basically hanging out. They were hanging out near the beach area, and it was fun while it was going on. Most of the time, her family would travel and see new things when it came to Italy and other places, but of course, Charlie went with Sarah. She also went with Sarah because she really enjoyed it. Of course, Charlie was Charlotte's nickname, so that's what I'll call her as times. So, Charlie and Sarah were pretty much hanging by the beach, but as they were hanging by the beach, she was getting pictures of her friend and Sarah. So, they were at the beach having a great time. However, though, this isn't really the type of story to make you jump out of your seat, but it's definitely one that might make people feel unsettled. So, to keep in mind, Sarah and Charlie had a great time together, and they really enjoyed their time having fun at Italy. However, it wasn't until when Charlotte got back to her room. She started going through the photos, but one particular photo really stood out to her. There was a photo what seemed to be a man, maybe around his mid 50s, and he was in the background of one of the photos with Sarah. Honestly, she seemed to be smiling and wasn't really in the best position as he was somewhat, no, what he makes is an abnormal position. That was weird because there was barely anybody in there, and this was definitely kind of odd since they never really seen this man or much anywhere in Italy. Of course, Charlotte decided maybe just to brush it off, thinking maybe it was just maybe her imagination, or in the most place, it probably wasn't since just anybody. Maybe it was just her imagination, or maybe it could have been maybe some sort of mind trick. Unfortunately, this is the question that it's going to be left unanswered for a while. But of course, a few years later, when Charlie visited Italy again in 2018, of course, Sarah did confirm that it was definitely paranormal, as she never seen a man like that. Even when Charlotte sent her photos of it, she couldn't even believe it. She at first thought that maybe she was crazy, but this didn't seem very crazy at all. It definitely wasn't something that anyone would see, but this definitely really was unsettling to them for a while. And of course, they eventually moved on thinking it was just, some sort of hesitating joke just for people just to maybe think that they're just being silly. But eventually, it becomes more realer the more they look at it. Now they are realizing that it pretty much could be paranormal, but there's no way to be for sure if that was the case. During my friend's vacation in Vermont, he came across this really old, weird abandoned house that his friend was living nearby. Now, at the time of the story, we'll call my friend by the name Harrison. Harrison was in Vermont visiting his grandparents with his dad's side of the family. Of course, he was living with his dad, as his mom unfortunately died during a car accident caused by a drunk driver. Harrison was about 15 at the time of this story, and this was around 2019. As Harrison was about 15 at the time, his buddy Nicholas was 16. Just a little over, but of course, Nicholas along with Harrison were good friends. They both liked to do stuff together, play video games together online, and etc. However, one story really made them feel like they should be ghost hunters. They pretend to watch stuff like Ghostbusters and pretend to do stuff like hunting for ghosts and stuff. Of course, they really wanted a real ghost, as they've been wanting to do this for a long time. In Vermont was a very good opportunity and hoped that they would catch something. Harrison, along with Nicholas, went to this very old abandoned house that had a piano in there, and Nicholas did say that his neighbors reported hearing the sounds of a piano being played, but they couldn't find anybody inside the house playing the piano. Of course, this was Nicholas's and Harrison's big opportunity to capture the moment. As they were in the house, they were pretty much exploring the house that looked like it had been caked in dust for years. It looked as if no one has even been in that house for a while, and this honestly really surprised them, thinking that maybe somebody might have bought the house and renovated by now. Of course, they went into one room that appeared to be a living room, and there was an old piano. The piano looked like it was like at least a few years old. They weren't really sure when it was made. But as Harrison, along with Nicholas, entered the room and took a closer inspection of the piano, it was still playable as they tested out the key, and it seemed to work fine. As they were just about to leave the room to go find something else, they heard a piano key tapping and making a sound. Honestly, Harrison thought it was Nicholas just playing around, but Nicholas said that he wasn't playing around and that he was looking at the next room the whole time. Honestly, it was unsettling to Harrison because they had never seen anything like that, and they've never heard a piano making a sound by themselves. In fact, nobody was on the piano. This got them really worried and thinking that maybe there was someone in the house, but no one was in the house with them, and they checked all the rooms. When they got to the second floor, they heard a few piano keys playing. Honestly, this really made them weirded out. They ended up leaving the house, but they never told anybody about this, thinking that their parents, including suspecting Harrison's dad and grandparents would think that they were just making up a story or their imagination was going wild. They had never told anybody about this story, thinking that no one would believe them. But of course, Harrison never believed in the paranormal, and neither did Nicholas. But however, after this story, they honestly don't really know what to think.